and welcome to VistaTalks, interesting discussions with interesting people from all around the world. I'm your host for today, María Roa, and I am delighted to be joined by Poppy Middleton. Poppy is a machine translation specialist at Vistatec. With over 8 years of experience in the localization industry, she has acquired great experience in a number of customer service roles, ranging from localization, quality assurance, to project management and machine translation deployment in a multi-language environment. Poppy, you are very welcome.
Thank you so much, Maria. Hi.
Let's move on. I have a number of areas I would like to discuss today with you.
Absolutely.
I know you have studied the Spanish and language literature and language at Oxford University, but I also know that you have studied Japanese, which is great. It's a language that I adore, and that's the next language I learned. So you need to give me some tips on that.
Okay.
Where did your passion for languages come from?
So I think probably it came really early on. So I would visit Spain every single year with my family. So we went to the south to Andalusia every year for extended periods. So I suppose I learned really early on the difference that language can make to your understanding of culture and your experience. So obviously over the years, it kind of became a second home to me. And I just realized the more and more I understood of the language, the more people would open up to you and the more you would understand them. And it just gives me, a new perspective on the world, seeing something from another point of view. So growing up in one country and then experiencing a completely different culture, it just makes you look at your own culture, your own behaviors, the world just completely differently. And I think that's really where it came from. And then I saw as well that it could bring out different parts of me. So characteristics and areas of yourself that you hadn't really explored or been able to in your culture. Different cultures and languages would bring that out. And I think probably you understand that when you have a different language, you have a slightly different personality in that language, which is really interesting for people to notice and tell you. And they're just different facets of you. So I think that's quite exciting, and it just builds your world. So yeah, Japanese was a left field choice, but I was offered it at college, and I thought this could be really interesting. Completely new world, it's got no root in Latin or anything like this, so very different. And at this point, I'd forgotten what it was like to learn a language, because of course English, your native language, you don't actually recall learning so much. Second language I'd learned pretty much for 10 years at this point. And then Japanese was totally base level. You have to really learn, okay, I know nothing again, let's go from scratch and work it all out again. But it's so rewarding, just when you manage to nail those first basic, levels. I find it really rewarding. So yeah, I absolutely love languages for those reasons.
I think it's really funny that you say this about being like you have a completely different personality when you learn a new language, because language is not only words, it's also part of the culture.
It is, yeah.
I just came back from Brussels and I had to speak English and French there, obviously. I speak both languages, and my friends who do not speak any of those languages were like, Maria, you sound completely a different person with those languages. It's like, you don't even sound yourself. It's like your voice tone even changes.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't sound the same in French. You don't sound the same in English. I mean, like, are you a different person? And I'm like, I kind of am. Somehow there's still part of Maria, obviously, but yeah, you're right. You're kind of a different person, because
absolutely,
like part of that culture gets into you, and that's beautiful,
mm-hmm.
isn't it?
It's amazing. And when I've gone back to my culture, you don't notice now, which they just overlap with all of your personalities. So I go back and I act in the same way I would in Spain, for example. And people notice, there's not quite an English person anymore. She's got a different style of doing things. And the more languages, the more places you live, the more you build on that. And I just think it makes for such rich experience and personality.
It does. I love that. Well, that's language, but what attracts you to the fast-paced world of localization? Because when I did enter into localization, I didn't even know this world existed. How did you, how were you attracted to it?
So I think from studying languages at university, it was, you know, I wanted to work in languages if possible. I wasn't really aware this world existed either. Certainly my first company, even being a big company, I wasn't really aware that it, you know, existed at the age of 21 or whatever. But it is an enormous world, and so, you know, broad. It touches every single area of life and all subject matters. So I was attracted to it mainly because of the language area, and then I worked in project management. So my first role was in project management. And I suppose the combination of understanding languages, really loving them, and being quite an organized person, or having learned organization through my studies, it fit really well for me for what I could see from the job description. From there, a whole world opened up that I didn't realize existed, and possibilities for me and things that I learned that I couldn't have known about just from reading the job description. So I think I got a little bit, you know, lucky in that. But yeah, I think localization is so interesting, and I found it more and more interesting because I've worked with so many different people from all over the world, just from working in this one. You know, I worked in one company for 4 years, and you work with all different departments, of course, and then all over the world with people who have vast ranges of experience, vast language skills. And I think that that's really what kept me loving localization, because it just brought you closer to everybody else. And that's what localization is about, isn't it? So it's about adapting into cultures, into languages, into other people's lifestyles, rather than blanketing the world with a single one language or one perspective, you know? So I think it's so interesting for that reason. And it's always moving and always changing, because just like it just mirrors the world.
And again, we engage into learning again from more people, more cultures, more languages.
Yes,
So
exactly. Yeah, it's endless. I mean, there's no limit to where you can go in localization. Absolutely isn't. It's just a sprawling web, and it's wonderful. Yeah, it's changed a lot even in the short time. Well, you know, relatively short time I've been in localization. So, yeah.
that's
Fantastic.
great. So you started your career as a project manager,
Yes.
went into machine translation, which for me it sounds crazy. You need more about that, please. And now you're a machine specialist here at Vistatec,
Yes.
and you're based in Tarragona. So I guess those travels to the south of Spain did your little heart, because you did move to Spain. Tell
Yes.
us a little bit, please, more about your role here at Vistatec. Because I understand some of your responsibilities include machine translation solutions, advice, and strategy, as well as MT feasibility analysis and engine customization.
Yes, that's it. So my role incorporates a few different areas. The two main sides of it are, one side is production focused, and the other is research focused, so development side. So client salespeople will approach us, the MT team, with varying degrees of understanding and experience with machine translation. And the goal for us is not just to sell a product or a service, but actually to educate. And of course, these clients are across really varied contents and industries. So you're speaking to a lot of different people all the time. And each use case is a little bit different for that reason. It's all very adapted to the client, but what we'll try to do is have like a pilot experience with them, try to see what exactly their goals are, why they would like to use this service, or what the purpose of using machine translation would be for them, and then what's possible. So depending on the languages, depending on the content types, some are easier, some are harder than others, depending on the quality they'd like at the end, we'll customize the workflow and sometimes train an engine for them as well. So it really depends on each client, each project. But that's a lot of the production side of it, as well as troubleshooting, and just monitoring workflow. The other side of my role is research focused, so staying on top of MT trends, which is really fascinating and is changing all the time. So it also includes attending seminars, conferences that I'm going to later this year. They're back on again, which is great after the pandemic. And yeah, just generally designing resources and updating processes. So for example, processes or trainings that we had a year ago, 2 years ago, they might not make sense anymore. They might be redundant, but there might be new needs. So if we see clients always asking us to define, what does this term mean? I don't really understand. We'll create resources to explain that to the client. So it's changing all the time, and a lot of it is self-motivated, you know.
That's great.
Yeah.
Basically, everything is super customized to the client. You know, it's kind of like a boutique. You're creating things apt for each person. I mean, it's not something that you just do for like 10 clients, but everything is personalized, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's absolutely personalized. You know, it depends what data the client has. So when I say data, I mean what usually translation memories, what they've already had translated. If they have key terms that they really don't want to get wrong, obviously in some client and in some public facing situations, you really can't get terms wrong. You know, it has to be the client's name exactly as it is. The engine can't be getting that wrong. So there's certain terms that they need to be, the high visibility, they need to be correct. So we can implement that in a glossary, train an engine just for them, so that all the content is customized towards their specific terms, which improves the quality. Then, of course, building on the engine training, you can add varying levels of editing, so human linguistic editing, so still using human linguistic processes in almost all machine translation to improve the quality. So again, it depends on what the audience is. If it's advertising, you can't be getting, you can't have a banner, you know, with some kind of questionable output from an engine on there. You need to have it top quality, you know, human linguistic quality. So all of these things are areas that we go through and pilot to make sure we get it right. But yeah, it's really a tailored service.
I did work for artificial intelligence, and we did build well, robots at the end, but in order to train those robots, we did needed humans, you know, we did needed people to train them. And that's something that people do not understand. I mean, behind those artificial technology, machine translation, whatever solutions, you need people working on them.
You still do, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We do need those people for sure.
Yeah.
So how was that transition from specializing in machine translation from your previous role as a project manager? I mean, like how did you decide it to change? Because this looks more like a technical ground, and you, as you said, it is really interesting because it's changing all the time, and that moves you to learning, which you did say before that it was something that it really interests you. But how was it? How did you decide into that transition?
So working in London as project manager, this was in about 2018. We began using machine translation, and I was asked to be on a team pioneering machine translation in the project management sphere. So basically what this meant was from scratch, going from 0 to a goal of 90% by the end of the year using machine translation. So yeah, it was quite a goal to have, a bit challenging, but quite motivating as well, because there were really clear parameters and we really wanted to get everyone on board. And at that point, having worked there a year, I already had good relationships with the linguists who were freelance, good with, you know, sales, other project managers, of course, which helped, because when you're, as you said, you're still using human linguists. You can't just transfer straight to machine translation without any linguistic help. We're still using it, and we're now in 2022. So certainly at the start, it involved a lot of working with linguists, trying to convince them this would be helpful for them. It will be a tool for them. And I actually really enjoyed that. Another part of it was training other project managers on the technology. And I think really because I wasn't a very tech person my whole life. In fact, a lot of people will confirm that. But I think really what I always found about technology was because I felt that I was maybe already on the back foot, maybe I already didn't understand it, and maybe the training didn't feel like it was quite comprehensive enough for people who weren't tech oriented, you know. And I do think a lot of people find this from speaking to other project managers and linguists as well, is sometimes tech jargon is quite difficult to penetrate if you're not a tech-minded person. And so actually what I really enjoyed was being one of the first. I understood the technology very quickly and I was taught it quickly, and then I could explain it to other people in terms that I would actually have appreciated learning technology in, you know. So kind of really, really broken down. Let's take away all the complex tech jargon for now, just to explain it in concrete terms, answer questions. So I ran a lot of trainings, and it was really enjoyable for that reason. So it felt like a bit of a bridge between the two worlds of tech and basically everybody else in production. So it can be a bit daunting, but I've found that if you come at it from that point of view, a lot of people will work with you on it. You know, there's less of a barrier against it when you explain it to them in their terms. So yeah, I think it's been really interesting working with these two worlds. It's not something I ever expected to be in, but it just was really motivating because it was the new tech, it was the new development in the industry. It's absolutely enormous, you know. It's transformed the language industry, and to be at the forefront of that and leading it was just so motivating for me. So yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Well, and as you say, the machine translation solutions can significantly improve project turnarounds, and that's super motivating. It's not only turnarounds, it's times, it reduces cost, it enables automatic translations. Well, Vistatec has been pioneering intelligent automated translation solutions for many years. Why do you think this is so important to our customers?
So I think the fact that we have a dedicated team in Vistatec who are really just focused on machine translation, it's not just technology, it's machine translation. And then now they've built up years of experience, like I said, with a wealth of major clients and different content types, trying to be as agile as possible to adapt to lots of different clients. That creates a lot of experience and a lot of understanding and knowledge. And I think our clients really appreciate that we can advise them better because we already have that for years, you know. We also have engines we've already trained, you know, that we can test with, which also really helps. So we're never going straight from scratch. And I do think the fact that we're trying to educate clients as well, like I said, is because it's the same with clients. I mean, we think that everybody understands the technology just because they've heard of it. Of course they wouldn't if they don't work in that world. So it's breaking it all down, putting it in terms that aren't intimidating. And I do think they appreciate that as well. And it's what keeps them coming back. So we've found mainly that it's cost savings rather than time savings. We're quite focused on giving our linguists enough time to make sure they can do a thorough linguistic edit, post-edit. Yes. So we don't want to cut them off at any point.
Very important.
Yeah, exactly. Because ultimately then we're not delivering on what we say we're delivering on, and then nobody's happy. So really it's the cost savings that we see the benefit to. And of course, with everything moving so quickly now in the world, it needs to be available quicker. And it is a little bit of a time saving, but I think clients are really appreciating that they can do the same, they can create the same product now, but at a much lower cost. So they can actually do more with their money. And they can, instead of localizing into 5 languages because of the cost savings, they can localize into 10, and that allows them to get into more markets, and that's what it's all about really in the world, just increasingly global. So it's absolutely, it's been phenomenal for the industry. I mean, we can see that clients are coming to us every single day, with new requests. I'm not really sure what machine translation is, but I think it might help us. And then from there, we just we take their hand and we go through it.
We guide them through machine translation way.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Through the right path. So, well, we're coming to the end almost, and I would like to ask you, how do you see the MT changing the industry landscape in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, so I think really, I mean, you can see the changes already that are happening with the use of machine translation. Even day-to-day lives, we probably don't realize how much we're using it already, but it's in every device we have. However concerned you are about the use of machine translation, we are using it all the time. And I think in the next 5 to 10 years, I can see this point of customization becoming increasingly important. And that'll be possible with big shifts in the models that we use. So we had a shift from statistical to neural machine translation engines about 4 years ago. And this was a huge shift in quality. And what that meant was, you know, I mean, you can see it with major providers with their free translation. You can see the shift was enormous. It went from a word to word, very basic translation to sentence level comprehension, context, understanding, things like this. And so when we get another shift, I think the quality is going to take another leap. I don't know when that will be, hopefully in the next 5 to 10 years. So I'm looking at document level context, which will be more like getting close to that human intelligence context understanding, right? Which when we read a document, we understand what the audience is. The engine at the moment still can only go at a sentence level understanding. So when we get close to that document level, you're going to see another big shift. I also think probably merging machine translation with other areas of AI. So AI as an umbrella term, and then machine translation is just one of those points. I think we can see now with speech to text, advancements in subtitling, I think we're going to have a more dynamic approach. So rather than just text to text machine translation, it's going to become very popular, and we're going to have high quality subtitling, high quality speech to text, which is more specialized in dialects, recognition of different dialects, smaller language bases. The main providers are working on increasing the languages that we have, lesser known, lesser resourced languages, and creating models which can pick up on those dialects, which I think is going to be really interesting as we go forward. So I imagine it's going to be more towards that, as opposed to just this, we've got one word doc output. I think it's going to be much more dynamic in the future. Yeah.
Well, that's really great. Is there anything else with our audience today, Poppy?
All I really want to say is that coming from my point of view, somebody who was never working in tech, who never studied tech, I think it's really important not to be intimidated by areas that you haven't studied, or that you can't see people like yourself in. I was really grateful to be given the opportunity to work in a team where I had no background, but I was welcomed in for the abilities or the skills that I already had. I love training people. My team weren't as much on that side of things. So you always have something to give. And as you can see in the world, really, I mean, it's going to be coming together of different skills that are kind of left field to create more interesting teams, more interesting objectives in the future, I think. So just as a point, just not to be too intimidated by that, because really it's you and your uniqueness that might add something which the team has never seen before, which might take it in a new direction. So yeah, that's all I wanted to add.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Maria.
So that's the end of today's show with Poppy Middleton. Please make sure to tune in again to see and/or to listen to the next VistaTalks show, where we will be discussing more interesting topics with interesting people from all around the world.